So, like, for the longest time, I thought Tom Cruise's name was Tim. For some reason, don't ask me why. But it's actually Thomas. It's nothing to do with Timmy. I don't know why I call him Timmy Cruise.
It's because it's Timothée Chalamet.
You think so?
Because of how much of a legend that guy is, and how, like, Tom Cruise is as much of a legend. Not even, it's disrespectful. He's like 10 times the actor that Timothée Chalamet is currently.
He has 10 times the career.
The career that he has. So, like, we gave him the iconic Timmy.
We fucking love fucking both of them. I love both of them. Anyway, let's talk about it. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning came out this past week, and I am floored, flabbergasted, and in love once again. Since it came out and since I saw it this past Monday, I have rewatched practically every single Mission Impossible outside of MI2, which I have never seen yet because apparently it's the worst one.
And so apparently it's bad.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of avoiding it.
Balloons.
Balloons.
Well, there were balloons.
I sparked balloons. I didn't mean to. Yeah, so apparently it's bad. So I'm not really going for it. But I've gone through every. I got to get around to it eventually. But I've gone through every single Mission Impossible. This is the type of movie, Dead Reckoning, Final Reckoning, that can evoke the feeling, the desire to go back and rewatch some heat that's been made in the past. And it's so interesting to me that Tom Cruise is 29 years deep in a franchise, still the main character. No spin-offs, no reboots. They just keep going with sequels every 3-4 years. And they are knocking them out of the park in dramatic, eccentric, colossal fashion. And it leads to this breaking point, which is Final Reckoning. Nick, I dragged you into this movie telling you, just trust me. Tom Cruise told us to trust him. You got to trust me. This is fun. And then
because you're like, I haven't seen any of them before. Yeah. That is the context. No, actually, I've seen the fifth one in bits.
Rogue Nation, yeah, sure.
Nation, I've seen it,
but that doesn't do justice to the franchise. Like let's just say you went into Final Reckoning not being a fan or connoisseur of the franchise.
I went in Dead Reckoning completely oblivious to whatever the hell was going on. It was a completely new experience,
and for that reason, the detrimental parts that people are pointing out about this movie probably work to your benefit, whereas the people who have been keeping up with the franchise or watched the previous movies leading up to this one were like, okay, this first hour of exposition, this exposition fest is killing me.
But I feel like it's a point we could get to like later on in the show. What I really want to start with is how much of a goat Tom is.
I'll just start with Tom.
Just start with Tom, my guy.
Mr. Scientology himself. No, Tom Cruise is... These words might not sound like compliments, but I mean them in the absolutely most endearing way. The intensity of this man. The sheer intensity of everything he does. There's something to say about that. There's something to point out and appreciate when a man, a woman, a person is able to push the boundaries and limits of what is the norm.
The embodiment of dedication. Like
absolutely.
The sheer willpower that it takes not only to make those movies, but to make them for 29 years, to make them at such a high standard. MI2 we're skipping, but like to make it as good as they are, stand the test of time, and still bring people in the theater year after year after year, upward slope going up like this. Every single time he outdoes, like the entire team outdoes itself. Yeah. It's a beautiful sight.
So I wanted to touch about that because the entire team is an important facet. Mission Impossible launches in 1996, and Tom Cruise sits on a news interview and flat out says, if Mission Impossible were to have sequels, they're going to be done with different directors because I want every movie to have a different style. And so you go from Brian De Palma to John Woo to J.J. Abrams. And then you do Ghost Protocol with Brad Bird, who also directed The Incredibles. Shout out Brad Bird.
Legend.
And then you get to Rogue Nation and you stumble upon a guy called Christopher McQuarrie, who directed Tom's Jack Reacher film. And Tom has gone over the story about how he met McQuarrie, who he calls MQ, McHugh. And he says, when I spoke to McHugh, he had a vision for Mission Impossible that kind of transcended where we had taken the franchise right away. His first movie, the collaboration between Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, their first film together outside of Jack Reacher is Rogue Nation. That's their first Mission Impossible movie.
The one I saw.
And, yeah, but that is also the one where the stunt opens with Ethan Hunt dangling off the side of a cargo plane. And that's when I remember like being kind of detached from the franchise as a youth. But I remember sitting in the theater because I think my grandfather brought me to see Mission Impossible. And I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. I'm so impressed. And this movie is really good. And then Mission Impossible kind of got back under my radar. And then I went to see Fallout. And I'm like, this is really good. And then I fell back under my radar. And then I watched Dead Reckoning. And I'm like, this is actually one of the best franchises I've ever been a part of.
The fact that this is coming from a James Bond fanatic.
Myself.
Also,
my God.
That's a point
it's my favorite
too. It's just being able, because for me, as I'm going to consider myself from now on as a first-time watcher of the entire MI series, being more familiar with the James Bond universe than I am with that one. It was crazy to see the parallels, not necessarily in how it tries to copy it, but how its cues and what makes a spy movie works can be translated in a wide set of constructs that could make a completely different movie based on your approach without it being completely plagiarism from one franchise to the other. And that to me, I was thoroughly surprised by.
It's so interesting to me because you speak of the parallel from Ethan Hunt to James Bond, or Mission Impossible to James Bond, and that's interesting because it's two spies, two different operations, everybody's different missions. I'd say James Bond is that standard spy movie. They came out in the 60s, for Christ's sake. It's there's the good guy, there's a bad guy, there's a love interest. Let's make it all work. And that is the basic formula that a lot of movies go with. Good, bad, evil, love interest, protagonists, obstacles, etc. Mission Impossible, over the years, has been criticized for the lack of character depth that some of these people have. This is a thing that's happened, and to be fair, when you open your movie and your main character is dangling off a side of a plane, or he's trying to fist fight a Russian military man, you're kind of like, I don't know who he is, but he's doing something cool. And Mission Impossible forever just gets by with, he's doing something cool, And they really pave and perfected the lane of, we don't need you to love our characters because they're morally complex, etc., etc. We need you to love our characters because they're entertaining you. You love the IMF team of Ethan Hunt and Benji, in this one particularly Luther, Grace, etc., because they continuously entertain you. Mm-hmm. They have the mission. They figure it out. And sure, they all have pasts that are not really tapped into, and you don't really know why they're who they are. But that doesn't matter. It's about how they work together.
Because it's not about what makes the character great. It's about what makes the movie great.
Absolutely.
It's the sum of their parts. It's all it is. And to be completely honest, it's a daring move. If you want to see the glass full, to be yeah, I know that if I had a couple less characters, a bit more developed ones, I'd probably get away with more crap here and there. But being able to be we're going to strip everything to its core, keep only what's necessary, and let the movie work, is a daring move.
And that's interesting to me because it's something that James Bond used to do as well. The old Bond movies, Bond is essentially just the spy, and the most you know about him is that he likes his martini shaken, not stirred. And then when they took on Daniel Craig's art, they opened him up and showed vulnerability, showed a human side to Bond, which was interesting. But it also faced as appreciated as Daniel Craig films are, it faces the same this is not the Bond I'm used to. This is not just classic mission Bond. But what I like about Mission Impossible is that it just stays the course. It's like you want to see us do something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just watch. And I agree with you completely. You cut character and you grow out your characters, you can get away with a lot more stuff, the leeway of characters, and not everything feels so cheesy. But that's all of that only happens if you aren't blown away by everything else. Like, you don't need to develop your character if you understand that your character is somebody who's willing to do anything for his team by dangling off the side of a biplane. Like, that shows you everything you need to know. It's interesting because I was watching a podcast this week, and Glenn Powell, this is circa 2021 or 2022, Glenn Powell was being interviewed, and he's talking about his role in Top Gun Maverick. And he's like, I auditioned to be Rooster. He's playing Hangman. And Tom Cruise met with him, and he said, Glenn, I want you to be part of the movie even if you're not going to play Rooster. And Glenn Powell said, look, if I'm not playing Rooster, I don't really want to be a part of the movie. And Glenn Powell said, no, that's what Glenn Powell said. Then Tom Cruise said, well, Glenn, tell me what type of career you want to have. And Glenn Powell said, if I want to be honest, I want to be like you. I want to be the stature, the superstar, the blockbuster guy that you are. And Tom Cruise says, well, if you want to be like me, you got to understand something. I don't pick great roles. I pick great movies and make the roles great. And Glenn Powell said right there, that's convinced him to play Top Gun. So he took on the role of Hangman. He crushes it. And Glenn Powell has gone on to be his own career. But those words that he told Glenn Powell, that Glenn Powell shared in that podcast, are reflected in every single Tom Cruise move.
It's his life.
It really is.
The summary of his life.
It really is.
I never heard of like that interview and like that conversation. It's such a beautiful insight to how he thinks and how like it like justifies and like explains how he got to the point he is today.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that like it's not only trusting your cards, it's understanding that even if your cards are not great, you're gonna play your hand to the fullest degree.
It's spectacular stuff,
and it goes hand in hand with the fact that he's a great stuntman too. The resilience that it takes to just do that mentally and physically. It just shows like it paints clear the picture that is before our eyes. One of the greatest actors we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And I want to go back to the point you made earlier about this movie being simple in terms of its character, but deep in its like, I'm gonna amaze you. I'm gonna make it like a worthwhile experience. Mm-hmm. I was on the edge of my seat the entire way through, as someone who was like not really aware of what was going on in that franchise. I knew it was all about like the big stunts. I knew it was about Teme and like everything around this, but nothing else. And what I came to realize, oh my god, the camera!
Yeah, I was gonna say you just batted your camera.
Yes. What I came to realize is that more than anything, what this movie is really good at is to make you turn off the switch inside your mind and be like, why would you think about it when I can just show you and you could be amazed by whatever is going to come before your eyes? Mm-hmm. And for me, as a viewer that really, really, really likes to dissect movies, try to understand the intent behind what the directors, the actors, the writers were trying to transmit, it was such a relief and a new experience to just be like, I'm going to turn off, and I don't feel like I'm stupid for turning off. I feel like it wants me to turn off.
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful thing. I've never actually had that in a movie. Because every time I turn off, it's either because it's too bad. Like in a Fast and Furious, my brain doesn't need to function. I could be sleeping and I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's just... No, it's a beautiful thing. And I did not expect that.
I think it has this thing. I think now, moving into this particular entry, like Final Reckoning... Before Final Reckoning even screens, there's a short video of Tom Cruise saying that he's so happy people are here to watch it in theaters. He's overjoyed, blah, 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 blah. And then he ends it with, I hope you like it because we made it for you. And then I'm like, Okay, Tom, cool. But then you start watching it and you're like, this has for the audience written all over it.
And
Hell,
not fan service.
People complain about exposition. Exposition is for the audience. It's this is what's happening. Now you understand the stakes. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, speaking of the Final Reckoning exclusively, the first hour of this movie allows people who have never seen a Mission Impossible to get caught up to speed, relatively caught up to speed. And it allows fans of the franchise to sit there and rejoice in the 29 years of a journey that they've been through with these characters.
I can attest from this first point of view too, of like making yourself aware of what was going on, because for a movie that is like what, the 8th entry?
8.
Yeah, I did not feel like I missed out anything, and it's not because it was not relevant. It's because it was not needed given the movie. And again, it's down to the mission status of every single movie. From what I understand, is you're gonna start, you're gonna end, and it's cyclical. It's always gonna come back. You're just gonna like age. Missions are gonna change. The stakes are gonna change. But at the end of the day, the core is still there, and it's all that really needs to be.
I think what's fascinating is that Mission Impossible is a franchise that you can enter at any moment and not feel completely lost. And it is because the movies are warm. It is because there's interchanging elements to the team. It is because Ethan Hunt will always be Ethan Hunt. His decision making is never faltered or altered by anything that's happening psychologically. He's always going to be just, I got to do what's great. And so I think that's interesting. That's a great part about it. And I think this is the only movie of this franchise, because it has so many tie-ins to the previous entries. More specifically, the previous entry, which was Dead Reckoning Part 1, it needs to make those draws. It needs to show that, okay, this guy that you might not remember since 1996, he's back, he's here. Or this guy that we haven't spoken to in years, he's also here. Remember what I did in 2006? Yeah, it has to do with this here. And so those flashbacks are appreciated, because if we're being realistic, there's a whole lot of terminology that gets thrown around in these Mission Impossible movies that everybody can understand just by watching. But if you're not really cued in, like, you're like, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But I think they do a great job. And I am not a person who's going to sit here and say, I don't like the exposition. I don't mind exposition in an action franchise like this one. If the exposition is served to a greater purpose, which is closing out a 29-year franchise, it feels like a celebration. Mm-hmm. So, ironically, nothing to this movie feels extremely final towards the back half. It doesn't feel like it's the last time we're going to do this. But that beginning makes you feel like we're approaching the end of this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and then there's some sequences that go down, especially in the first part of the movie, part of spoiler territory, I guess. Although we're hitting the week mark on this, so
I think there's a way to approach it without spoilers. And the way
I don't want to, but
yeah, but the way I would go about it is, it's crazy to me that I've just now, because of this movie, realized that 99% of franchises that try to close their story arc fail at. And it's the idea that just because you're trying to end things doesn't mean that you need to change the way your movie ends.
Yeah.
And that is a realization that I've had watching this movie. Mm-hmm. Because the first, it's a 3-hour movie, let's be clear. But the first 45 minutes, we're all about that. We're burying the hatchet. We're making you realize, okay, it is the end. You know it's the end. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean we're not going to give you one last Mission Impossible movie. And what they did is they gave us
instead of giving you this epic grand finale that feels so out of touch with the rest of the franchise,
everything of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that of it. Like, I appreciate the fact that the last scene in this movie isn't the family in a barbecue picnic setting.
Yeah, it's
Shout
not
out
James,
Fast and Furious for that bullshit. Every movie ends with a family barbecue, like, bro.
It's not James Bond retiring to the Bahamas. You know, it's not.
No.
It's not. It's nothing like that. It's just you got what you asked for.
And it's the words, it's the monologue at the end that pushes the vehicle of the final message of what it means to be Ethan Hunt's character. A monologue delivered by Luther, and I'm like, you don't need to do more than that. And there's something final about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that when somebody will go back and rewatch this entire movie, they will be well aware that they're watching the final entry.
Because it's
you
not.
don't
because
have to have an epic final battle. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's not about making it aware. There's no value in making your viewer aware that it is the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how the world ends itself.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie does just that. The world that you're like witnessing it from, the eyes of the IMF agents,
Mm-hmm.
they're the one that close out the story. It's not the movie that forces it upon them. And it's a beautiful thing because it lets everyone. There's no emotional turmoil left. There's nothing forced. Everyone is just themselves from beginning to end, and it makes for a very cohesive experience.
It does.
Which a lot of movies that try to end up lacking of because they need to make their characters too aware of what's going on in order to like deliver that message.
And that's a flaw that a lot of big budgeted movies have, where the characters are so aware that this is the final chance they have to do something, and so it kind of takes away from the glory of it. Every time, and this is not, I'm not knocking, I don't want to knock anything, but every time I rewatch a movie like Avengers Endgame, it loses pizzazz.
Mm-hmm.
It loses flavor because I'm like, yeah, okay, save the world, da-da-da. Like, when I watched it for the first time, mind blown, amazed. But does it age like an Avengers movie? No. I'll forever know that that's the final entry in an MCU saga. And it's presented that way. I'm sure this happens with so many other franchises. I know No Time to Die by James Bond very much feels that way. There's a huge weight of finality on the shoulders of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think Mission Impossible did what it does best, which is keep it light, keep it fun, have a great fucking time, and kick some ass at the movie theater. And that's what it does best. And that's what they do best here. And I don't want anybody who's listening to this episode feel like we're undermining the epicness that Final Reckoning has. Because holy shit. Like
it's crazy.
When we say we don't have the epic battle, that doesn't mean we don't have the epic moment. It doesn't mean we can't stand on the same tier as Fallout, Rogue Nation, and Dead Reckoning, and Ghost Protocol. Like, again, they all have these moments of pure insanity.
And again, for people that know me, it's a pretty good testament. The fact that they were able to turn my brain off. And I was literally, like, after an hour and, like, 10 minutes in, for a 3-hour movie, it's barely, like, a third of the way in. I literally went, like, I'll stop thinking. I'm just going to see what happens.
Just let him figure it out.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I know that I won't be able to figure it out, not because it's ludicrous, but because it's impossible. And they're going to find a way.
Exactly.
Through that
like, let them do it. Let them do it. That's their job, right? So, and I think an hour and 10 takes you exactly to where the submarine sequence is, which is like that sequence. So first of all, I want to give big props. I have to give big props to the technical team behind Mission Impossible, starting with sound design. The decision making that goes into no dialogue, no audio, no score,
only small hits of strings here and there, like accentuate moment. Like you work with the camera in order to make the sound pop.
Exactly, and you deliver a scene so tense. In my memory, that is the most tense scene in Mission Impossible franchise, the submarine moment. And I'm talking about
submarine.
So the submarine moment I'm talking about is was the stunt, which was in the trailer, which is he's got the helmet on, the full suit, and he's got to go through the Podkova. No, the Stemeklikov there. What? Let me find. I have the name.
He has to retrieve the tablet.
He's got to. Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's a bit later than
the Sevastopol.
Okay.
The Sevastopol.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about the moment where he finally does what the whole movie needs him to do, which comes at the halfway point when you think about it. But that moment is perfect intensity. Mm-hmm. Now, I think you probably gave up before that, and I'm saying
I
the
gave,
moment
if
when...
I have to be precise, it has to be...
When the mission begins.
When it's actually when they first laid out the plan. When Luther... Like, something happens with Luther, everything goes to shit, and it's the first time they're like, here's what we're gonna do. And the most ludicrous plan on earth happens. It unfolds before your eyes, and I'm like, this is gonna work. But what? I was like, I'm just gonna see what happens.
So I think what deserves props when it comes to the Mission Impossible franchise is the self-awareness. The self-awareness of characters like Benji and Grace to be like, Ethan, you're gonna bet the whole world on the blink of an eye, and he's like, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, yes.
It's all I can do. Let's go, Tom.
And you feel like you're gonna win big because you know that you're about to head towards the moment, the climax. And in this movie, they do all the exposure you need, and once they're done with the exposition, hard cut, they present the mission, and it's like we're taking off. Like, we are not looking back. Somebody on Letterboxd, I can't remember who, said spends the first 45 minutes telling you how awesome the franchise is, spends the last 2 hours showing you how much more awesome it can get. And I'm like, I bought into that reality. I will never, and I do my best to not sit down at a movie that just seeks to entertain, not to make a point, not to tell you a story, that is just purely there to entertain you, and sit there and nitpick. Well, that's cheesy. Oh, that... Bro, it's just supposed to be outright fun. And if you can't just sit down and have fun, it's not for you. But if you can, 3 hours will go by like an hour and a half.
Yep.
Smile from ear to ear throughout the entire runtime. It's hard not to.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment in the movie?
In this specific movie, my favorite moment is actually my favorite sequence actually happened at the there's a scene that happened. It's jump cutting between two sequences happening simultaneously, but essentially Tom Cruise is attacked. Ethan Hunt is attacked on a submarine during a workout, which is a scene that you see in the trailer. He's fighting in his underwear, and that is jump cut simultaneously with the rest of the IMF team fighting Russian soldiers in a shack in the middle of the Arctic,
in a very time constrained situation.
Yeah,
like they're running out of time, and there's like barely 1 to 2 minutes left, and there's no way, given the current circumstances, that they're gonna make it. And so you're just sitting there on the edge of your seat because you know they're gonna make it. You just don't know how.
And I ironically, what works for me is they're cutting between two situations where somebody's situation is nowhere near as dire. Like, Ethan Hunt's fighting for his life, but he's not pressed for time. The rest of the IMF team is really pressed for time. Like, they got to hurry up, like, do this right away.
But I feel like I see it the other way around. How like the reason he's more pressed for time than the others is that it's. I don't want to go back. You didn't miss it. You just didn't mention it. It's his last go around at like getting what he's waiting for.
Yeah,
and that builds the tension for that moment. Yeah. So it's with that in mind that everything has tension.
I was gonna say the reason it works so well for me, because I think this works well. The idea that his situation, he's waiting on them, but if they succeed, let's say in some weird world where Ethan Hunt could die, if he dies to this guy in a fight right now, there's no one there to receive the message. his situation, he needs to stay alive so that when his team gets out of something, the message could be passed. And although as a viewer you sit there going, well, no one's going to die here. They're going to figure it out. They always do.
But you're so mesmerized.
They take you into a situation where you're like, come on, guys. Like, we gotta move. Let's go, guys. Let's go.
There's no time left, bro.
Like, we're rooting for that. Like, they just know how to get people on their side. And the reason that's my favorite sequence is that it's not a sequence that involves the craziest stunt or the most dramatic scene. It's just the characters doing what they do best, which is we'll figure it out and we'll do it together. And I also like the idea that I didn't see that sequence in any marketing publicity or anything. It was brand new. It was like, holy shit, this is like awesome. And it's just a straight fight. But there's something funny about Simon Pegg watching Simon Pegg drive a Russian soldier into a bookshelf. Like, I'm like, that's hilarious. And Haley Atwell's fighting with, and then like the implications, the stakes, the intensity just rises. It boils over. And it just feels so spectacular. And it feels so, dare I say, impossible. And then you realize that, of course, it's not impossible. They're going to figure it out. But you are, you stay in a complete state of shock as to, or not shock, but the word I'm looking for is amazement. You're mesmerized.
You're in awe.
They got you in a gaze, in awe. That's the word. That's the word. I was looking for rester ému, which is to be in awe of everything. And yeah, I always will be when it comes to this franchise. The IMF team is some of my favorite characters in film history. And I don't even know what they do outside of work. It doesn't matter. They're just so cool. Like,
I have one scene though that like I know if I start, you're gonna go off, and I want you to go off.
No, go.
I haven't seen previous Mission Impossible movies, but from everything you've told me over the years, and from what I can gather from the internet, I don't think there was a more horrifying / claustrophobic / tense moment in Ethan Hunt's career as a spy as the sequence under the water. The moment
now we're talking about the Sevastopol.
Yeah, the Sevastopol. The moment he gets out of the submarine and has to go down to like retrieve it.
Yeah.
To me, although I'm someone who loves like the sea, I love like swimming, I love going underwater, I do scuba diving, I like all of that, but there's nothing more terrifying than the sea.
The deep blue sea.
The deep sea. There's nothing more terrifying than that because it's pure void. And it's the unknown before you. And I feel like it really just implies how stranded he is during that whole sequence. And it really works with the theme of the moment, that like act of how like alone they are in the world. The fact that you're so alone, we're going to put you in the middle of the water in the frozen ocean, 500 foot under like the water. We're going to make you retrieve something that hasn't been seen for 10 years. You're alone. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Can you ask for something more terrifying than that?
And you're going from room to room, not knowing what's going on. And there's the threat of live nukes in the Sevastopol. Like, and that's kind of what I was touching on before. Like, massive props for the technical team, and it shows their prowess in that sequence. The only reason the scene is so stressful. Well, the idea is stressful, but it's accentuated with this sound design that, like, keeps you glued into your seat. You cannot look away or look past anything that's happening in this sequence.
And you cannot look past at how out of control he is. Like Tom Cruise.
Well, he has to essentially swim his way through live bombs. Like,
I guess what I meant to say,
he was really on his Mario shit. I don't know if you know the level where the fish go up and down, but it really feels like that. Like he's doing something. It's out of this world. Like,
and it's not even a question of out of this world. It's like, you know, when there's, I don't remember the movie again, the one where he climbs the building.
Ghost Protocol, the
All right.
Burj Khalifa in Dubai.
When he's climbing the building, he's in control of his body. He's in control of the fact that he's climbing this building,
Mhm.
and it's between him and the task.
Mhm.
Whereas in this scene, it's not him and the task. It's him fighting for his life in order to get to the prize.
Yeah.
Where everything is stacked against him, and the only thing he has is his willpower.
I think it deserves to be noted. The Sevastopol isn't as deep in the ocean as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's balancing on a rock. Like, that is a big part of this sequence that kind of gets like forgotten or undermined. The Sevastopol is on a rock, and as Ethan goes through it and accidentally knocks things over and floods it with water, the rock is starting to crack and the Sevastopol is moving.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, that's where I feel like your point of no control is the most apparent. He could swim in the water, but what happens when the water is going from like this to this to
Mm-hmm.
this, and he's upside down, or he's upside? Everything is constantly rotating, and he cannot stand up straight. He can't get the doors open. He can't get what he needs to do because everything is always moving.
And they do.
Yeah, go ahead.
They do such a good job as describing the physical toil that it has on a human body to be like so deep in the ocean.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned that is that although in his acting it's not shown, and like at the end of the day you just see it's him trying to like survive in it, and it doesn't really like transpire. The fact that you know as a viewer that he has to go through all of that as well as trying to retrieve something, it's mind-boggling.
I was about to just make that point, but right before you said it, they do such a great job before the stunt happens at telling you how dangerous the stunt is. like Ethan, no one's ever done this before. You're gonna die. He's like, yeah. And they're like, if your suit breaks, you have X amount of time to get moving, or you're not gonna make it. Or even when he talks to Benji's like, you're gonna pass out. He's like, I know. Like they build it up to a point, and then they're like, if the Sevastopol is touched in the wrong, if you push the thing in wrong, it's gonna blow up. And he's like, like, it makes everything feel, dare I say, impossible. And then you gotta let Ethan go in there and just do it. Just do the shit, man. Just figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where the viewer, knowing that they've said all of this, oh shit, we gotta watch out for that, we gotta watch out for that, we gotta watch out for that, we gotta watch out for this, oh no. And you know he's gonna make it, but we're still looking out for all the things that could go wrong.
And you know a scene like this succeeded when it gave me like the movie Abyss. Like, it gave me Abyss vibe.
Oh yeah, it's
like
beautiful.
Big Abyss vibe. Not because of like not because of like the setting or like the style or everything, but just because of how good it is at recognizing the real stakes of being on the water and just working with nuclear weapons, dangling on a rock in a submarine. You have a retrieve and shit. It's just, it's such a beautiful moment.
And you know, the scene is effective when we were sitting in a full theater on a Monday night, and I don't hear a single popcorn bag in that entire sequence. That's when you know people are not hungry. Like, I'm not hungry. I'm stressed. Like, and that can't be said for any other part of this movie. I'm smiling, munching, but when I'm watching Ethan dodge bombs, I'm like, don't die, my boy. Don't die.
And
like,
so many times it comes close to, like, they're really good at hindering his progress, because for me, for an action movie to like have full marks, it has to be able to hide the path that they planned in order for the main character to get from point A to point B. And a lot of movies fail at that, but this movie didn't. Even in those like moment where it's at its most technical and needs the most planning in order to achieve what it like sets out to do. This sequence, it did not feel as if it was scripted. It felt as if he tried to get to point A to point B, but he couldn't. So he tried a new way, and he tried a new way, and he tried a new way.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well. For earlier, when we were talking about how great they lay out all the ground rules that are going to make this mission already pretty hard to do, they throw in some curveballs while the mission is happening. So as the viewer is looking out for all the things that he should avoid, the door opens and the Russian submarine's right there. And you're like, oh shit, we didn't expect that.
Nope.
And then
We
he
thought
avoids
it
it.
was like a meter away.
Yeah, that's what they said. So then it's
Mhm.
like shit. And then he's trying to escape the Sevastopol, and the equipment can't fit through the door. And then you're like, oh shit. Like they do a great job. Whereas where the mission, and this is just one mission, but where it already feels impossible enough, they throw in some curveballs just to spice it up, you know? And they do such a good job. They do such a good job.
And what is never said when those kind of things happen is the direct result of those decisions is not a great scene. It's the recognition that your viewer is smart. Because
in the sense that like they're paying attention, but we're gonna throw something more at
in the sense that like for an action movie to take its viewers seriously, it's one thing to give you quality content. It's another thing to be like, we're gonna give you shit that like you don't even need to pay attention to be like amazed at. But what if you did? Like, how could you like unfold more?
Yeah,
It's gonna quintuple your experience. And
yeah,
like for an action movie to do that. Very, very impressive to me.
They tell you, they'll talk about it in front of you, and then when it happens, it's up to you to remember if you listened or not. Like they don't remind you of everything that's happening. They just show you. Like, and I don't know. I think it's fantastic. I remember, and that happens in the final sequence. The final sequence of this movie is the sequence that's on the poster, the biplane sequence. And
it's in all the trailers too. Like
yeah,
it's
it's the main promotional piece of the movie because it's fucking impressive. But it happens in the film where Gabriel, who's the personified bad guy, I guess, because the real bad guy in this movie is the entity. I feel like we haven't really spoken about the plot of this movie.
We don't need to.
We don't really need to. Essentially, Gabriel's personified the big bad. But what I'm saying is, there's a point in this movie where he tells Ethan Hunt, I got a plane to get out of here, and if you break it, I got to back up. And then you see Gabriel take off, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, Ethan's gonna take the backup plane. Like I'm like, we're gonna figure this out.
That scene happens, and it's only like 20 minutes later that he actually leaves with the plane. So you got to remember, like a lot of shit went down like between those two scenes.
To me, it's not you have to remember. It's the benefit of listening. Of truly paying attention to what's said. Okay, you have a plane. This is a plane. There's a backup plane. You can watch this movie with your eyes half open and still be like, wow, that's awesome. Where do you get the plane from? Doesn't matter. But when he tells you, I have a plane, and you're like, there's the plane he said he had. And there's the backup plane that he also said he had. And then what unfolds is a wild final act for a Mission Impossible franchise. It's not the most impressed I've been in the franchise. I was firmly, if I'm being entirely honest, Dead Reckoning's my favorite finale of a Mission Impossible movie. With he rides a bike off a cliff onto a train. Like I'm watching it. I was watching it. I'm like, fuck off. Like, and then but this one's like equally as impressive stunt wise. Like
I think. I haven't seen the one before too, so I've seen the clip though of the jumping.
The bike jump is wild.
Yeah, but it's the length of that final stunt that does it. I think.
Yeah, it's the endurance test that makes this stunt crazy.
And what I liked about this movie too is that we didn't really touch on, and I feel like if we do, we're gonna go for another hour. Is that for something that I did not expect? It really wears its influences on its sleeve. Like to me, this like final scene with the plane screamed Indiana Jones. The way that like it's a duel in action. Like Indiana Jones is very good at finding a way to make an action sequence, even if it's gigantic, a duel between your main character and the evil, and how they're gonna like play off of the environment to chase, like a cat and mouse chase. This like final act felt like that through and through, and I really liked it.
I really urge you to check out Dead Reckoning and Fallout if you want to get that vibe of what it is to be one-on-one duel. First of all, Fallout is the best Mission Impossible movie ever. Like I watched that again this week, and I'm like, That's the only movie that my letterbox, like, that I gave 5 stars to on my letterbox that they've made. Actually, Dead Reckoning 2. So Fallout got 5 stars, Dead Reckoning 2. Both of those movies have something in common at the end. Ethan, and they actually all have that same thing, but essentially the thing in common is that Ethan has to get to the bad guy. He does it in this as well, but Ethan has to get to the bad guy, and once he gets to the bad guy, they're going to have a fist fight, and it's going to be a fair fight on ground. And in Dead Reckoning, it's actually on the top of a train, which is just like, but in this one, it's on ground. In Fallout, it's on ground, and it's just Tom Cruise knows exactly. He says it all the time, but I'm saying I confirm him right. When he says, I want to give an audience what they want to see. Well, if audiences haven't gotten their traditional action fix in a while, Tom Cruise knows that what makes an action movie good is the good guy versus the bad guy. They're going to square up, and the good guy's going to win.
And you know
let's watch.
And you know what makes it even greater in the case of a Mission Impossible? Is the fact it made me smile, literally. You mentioned how, like, cool it was for that fight to be, like, on top of a train. All right? I smiled because I was like, but a lot of movies have that, you know? But then I remembered, this shit's not fake.
Bro, parachute no, the trains. No, but bro, I don't think they're fighting on top of a train for real.
But you know what I mean still. The fact is, it's going to be more grounded in realism, and it's going to be more practical than any action sequence you can get. It's going to be all the more tangible.
And to me, it's not just that. It's... A lot of movies have a fight on top of a train or a fight on top of whatever. But what did it take for you to get there? In Dead Reckoning, he parachutes onto the moving train with the bike jump. In Fallout, he literally hijacks and flies a helicopter. He hijacks a moving helicopter and flies it and crashes it into a cliff. And then
Batman, fights. For real.
And then in this one, he takes the backup plane and brings it to the other plane to fight. Like it's, to me, the payoff of a fight, of a final fight, is only as impressive as the journey to get there. It is we've worked so hard, just kick his ass. And that's what Mission Impossible does so well. It's, we worked so hard to get to this very moment, and now that I'm face to face with you, I'm gonna give you these hands, and like in this movie, there isn't as much of a final fight, and that's because the movie does a great job at really kind of showing you who the real enemy is. Gabriel isn't as significant as he once was to the core of the story, but Ethan still wants him gone, so Ethan's gonna make sure this mofo is dead. Like.
And it's the thing is too with this movie is it did a really good job at saying how it's the world that is evil too, and like you cannot there's a way to like change the world, and it doesn't need to be like fist fights. Sometimes it takes a blink of an eye and then it's done. It's just to circle back to the original point of how good Tom Cruise is. He literally, like, you know how people go about saying that like Sir Christopher Lee is like one of the most accomplished human beings ever in terms of like what he did in his life. Bro was like a fighter, a secret agent. He was an actor, a singer in a like prog metal rock band. Like, man did everything. Tom Cruise is also all that in his own like right, and I feel it's something we gotta recognize as like. We're so lucky to have had like actors like him before, but to have him still today, it's a beautiful thing.
He's Mr. Blockbuster, right? He's Mr. I'm going to save cinema. That's who he is. It's in his nature to want to deliver the best possible movie for audiences to enjoy. I saw it on my phone today, just coincidentally, when he premiered Final Reckoning at Cannes. And the crowd stood up and applauded him. He only got a 5-minute standing ovation, which is not a lot compared to some of the other movies we've seen at Cannes, but 5 minutes for Mission Impossible. And you could see on the big screen, the video I was watching on my phone, Tom Cruise getting visually emotional at that reaction. And to me, when I watched it, I'm like, he's just a guy who wants to make an audience happy. And I'm sure he reaps the benefits in his career, financially, etc. But deep down, there's a man who won't let the
He won't settle for
80s
anything.
blockbuster era die. And as a film guy, as a true cinephile, and even aspiring filmmaker in my own right, I'm holding on to Tom Cruise as long as I can, because it's becoming more and more a reality that, hey, if we don't have Mission Impossible, we don't have an action movie this big. We'll have Bond every once in a while, when he comes back, and we get Dune. So Timmy Chalamet's kind of on lock with that type of stuff as well. But
high quality, vintage, original, like franchise, they're all gone.
Well, when you think of the idea that
the Matrix is gone it's been gone for a few years. Like, this is about to be done. The Bourne trilogy is also gone.
Yeah,
like all of this.
And then if you think of, Bond, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, franchises that have done their best to stick around, but it's mostly reboots and restarts, like jumping, right? And Mission Impossible has stayed the course for 29 years. I sat in the theater, and I'll flat out say it. If you made it this far in the podcast, I'll let one go, a spoiler go for now, because I figured you're really interested. I'm sitting in the theater beside my girlfriend who's at the screening with us, and Luther dies, and I'm like, and she looks at me, she goes, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "No, I'm not crying, but it'd be okay if I would, because you don't understand. They've been together for 29 years. I've watched them do this." And that is a testament to the franchise. That is incredible work by Tom Cruise to keep it alive for this long, to not restart, reboot, relaunch, to just say, hey, let's make another Mission Impossible. We'll add it, we'll tack it on. Just keep moving. Yeah, and that's okay. And I feel like that's a thing that studios don't do very much of anymore, which is just keep making a new one. Just make another one. It's okay. You just keep going. You can have bad apples in a franchise. I'll throw up the props to Star Wars for that. They made a bad movie. They're like, fuck it. Next episode, 2 years. No problem.
Double down.
Because believe in yourself.
Yep.
Double down. We live in an era where box office results dictate what's the next move.
They just look at Thunderbolts. Bro,
no, but that's what I'm saying. We live in an era where box office dictates the next move a studio is going to make. Spoiler alert, it'll never be reboot. Reboot doesn't work. Just because you made a bad movie doesn't mean you start fresh. Just watch it, make another one. And Mission Impossible made 1, 2, and 3, which are highly considered to be the 3 worst ones in the franchise. And then they're like, Ghost Protocol. Not that one's much better than the other 3. Rogue Nation. That one's even better than the last. Fallout. That's amazing. That's the best one you've made so far. Dead Reckoning. That one's also very, very good. I think Fallout might be better. Final Reckoning. Tom, congratulations. You've closed the show in perfect fashion.
You've cemented your name as one of the greatest.
He already was. That's the cycle. He's just building at this point. This is Tom Brady. Tom Brady. Yeah, it is Tom. No, Tom Cruise is like when Tom Brady went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're all ready to go, but he's like, want to see me do it for a different team? Watch this shit. He just does it again, and you're like, and that's what Tom Cruise is doing now. He's like, you want to see me dangle from a biplane? You want to see me do a backflip? Like, he's just showing off. He's the guy at the... You should watch after this episode when we're done recording. Go watch his Wired Google autocomplete. There's like, can Tom Cruise do this? Can he do that? Can he do that? He's just like, yeah. Yes, I can. I actually can. I can do that too. Like he's dedicated to his craft. He's incredible, and he's the epitome of what it is to be dedicated to movies, the blockbuster. If I leave, sorry, go ahead.
He's the epitome of doing what you love.
Oh,
like,
yes.
And I feel like the only reason I mention it is that I want to broaden his influence, like over like simply being a movie. Mm-hmm. He's inspired so many people in so many ways, whether it's like at crafting like careers around making movies, like a Glenn Powell, or like for every single stuntman ever. I feel like although he's like not one of the classic, neither is he like one of the niche guys. He's like a staple to this day. Mm-hmm. He's doing the same for like every single person that has like ambition in life looks up to people of his character and realize that, damn, this is the drive that actually will get you somewhere.
That's that level of dedication that you want to tap into.
It's a Mamba dedication. Like, it's a Mamba dedication. Question.
He's so impressive, you know. And a testament to that, and this is what I'm gonna, if we leave this episode with anything, I'm gonna leave it with this. I was watching a press tour for this movie, and Tom sat in front of a reporter, and the reporter goes, "This is your last one, right?" And he goes, "Well, it's called Final Reckoning." And they said, "Well, you feel like you can't top this. This is it." And he says, "No, I could make a better Mission Impossible movie." And they said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "I'm certain. I would do it." And that to me told me everything I felt like I needed to know, which was, you're walking away while you're up. You know that you can do anything else and you'll figure out how to take it to the next level. But you've reached a point where this is awesome. What it also made me feel like is, we're not done with Mission Impossible. Like, hell no. Like, give it. I give him. He's 62, which is incredible. I don't know another 62-year-old who's doing it like him out here. Outside of Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson wasn't even 62. Tom Cruise is older than Mike Tyson.
I don't know about the idea of having another Mission Impossible, because it's not a question of he's not able to. It's mentally what it represents is so convoluted and so against, I think, what he stands for as an individual. He has the capacity to do it, and the last thing he wants is for people to think he stopped making it because he couldn't. He realizes that I think he realizes that it's better to leave it as it is.
I agree. I actually agree. I think that this should be it. But
except you bring in Glenn Powell, bro.
Glenn Powell said he won't do it.
I know he won't.
It's the worst gig in Hollywood. I have to do really dangerous shit and risk hurting myself. He said my mom would tell me no.
I know. But you know what? Time does a lot of things. And if there's one thing I can be certain of, it's the kind of gig that grows on you. It's the kind of gig. It's a life of... It's going to be a weird comparison, but it's like the Mormon life.
So you got to tell me, Nick. You got to tell me. We got how many years before we see... This is your prediction. You think we got Ethan Hunt mentoring a young Glenn Powell in a film?
No mentoring.
No mentoring?
No
is
mentoring.
Ethan Hunt in it?
No.
So you think we're rebooting with Glenn Powell as the head?
Yeah.
In how many years do you expect that? Glenn Powell's already 35 or something.
And I was thinking like in 5 years.
All right.
Because...
I'm going to hold you to it because I love this franchise. So if we get more...
The only reason I would say so is it's the epitome of... You reach a certain... And I feel like, given we're talking about Glenn Powell, it might happen quicker than we realize. Like Tom, you reach a point in your career where, yes, the only way is up, but at the same time, there comes a moment where you can just settle down. And not settle down for less, but settle down for something that's gonna make you ascend. You know, it's all about like, I can jump so high, but what's gonna launch me? And I feel like Glenn Powell is the type of visionaire, given the way he thinks about how to become a superstar in like the movie scene, that's gonna realize that what he needs is that gig. He needs the James Bond gig. He needs the Ethan Hunt.
He needs the IP.
More than the IP, he needs the status. And an IP is not going to always give you a status.
You know what? I give it to him. I also think that there's a factor that plays into this is the fact that Tom himself has repeatedly expressed the desire of Glenn to replace him. Mm-hmm. He said, like, if I'm going to be replaced, it's by him. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, Glenn Powell's in Top Gun 2. Christopher McQuarrie already has Top Gun 3 in the works. Glenn Powell's a part of that. Get these two back in the same room.
It's only
the reality of Mission Impossible. Glenn Powell feels a lot more close than it actually might be. So I don't know. I don't think speculating might be the ideal way to figure out what happens. In the meantime, I think we sit around
and rejoice,
rewatch Mission Impossible, and we're happy to have it. And I think that we are sitting on one of the greatest, if not the greatest, action film franchise ever, competitive to Bond and Wick exclusively, in my opinion. So I feel like leaving it at that. I think that if people haven't seen this movie, go watch it. Don't be afraid of a runtime. It'll blow your mind. You are not wasting 3 hours at the movie. I spoke to somebody at work. That annoyed the shit out of me. Have you seen Mission Impossible? I'm not going to go waste 3 hours at a movie theater. I just watched you scroll TikTok for 45 minutes. Get the fuck out of here. Go to the movies. Go watch this movie. It will be worth your while. And if you don't want to go watch this movie, watch all the other ones on streaming at home because they're also fantastic. So just keep watching Mission Impossible. Keep it alive because don't let it die. Don't let anything die. Just let it all be alive. It's great to have. That being said, that pretty much brings us to the end of the CineCloud podcast this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you can like it, subscribe, and comment down below. If you didn't, feel free to share it to somebody who you think might. I'd appreciate that very much. If you're listening to us on audio on Spotify, Apple, you can give 5 stars, comment on that as well, and follow to never miss any more episodes. That being said, we appreciate the time that you took to listen to us today, and we hope to see you in the next one. Peace.